can see that panelists 3 are there.
Yeah. Okay. Very good morning to all. On behalf of our department, Planning and Architecture and Mizoram University, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shri KRS Sambaseva Rao, sir. Our speaker of today's webinar, Dr. Sandeep Sankat, and all participants, faculties, students, and my colleagues. It is my honor to introduce today's webinar speaker, Dr. Sandeep Sankat from Department of Architecture, SPA Bhopal. He is an alumnus of MITS Gwalior and Jamia Millia Islamia Delhi and a gold medalist at UG and PG level. He did his PhD in the area of elderly and built environment from School of Planning and Architecture Bhopal. Prior to his current position, he was a senior lecturer at Faculty of Architecture and Acoustics at Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Professor Sandeep Sankat is an Erasmus Fellow. He has been a recipient of Erasmus Global Mobility Funding for his proposed focus on success of Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, a central government initiative, through universal design. He has been awarded the prestigious National Award NCP EDP MAPSIS Award 2016 for his work in the area of accessibility, disability, and universal design studies. His specialization and expertise are in the area of architecture, acoustics, universal design, elderly and built environment, and user-centric design. He has been instrumental in publishing many research papers and books in his area of interest and expertise. Once again, sir, I welcome Professor Sandeep Sankat at Mizoram University webinar on design thinking in architecture. Sir, kindly take over and begin the seminar.
Okay. Very good morning to all the attendees. Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mizoram University, Shri KRS Sambashiva Rao, sir. The dignitaries and deans present and witnessing this webinar. Dear faculty members of the university and from other institutes also, including especially SPA Bhopal too, the non-academic staff of the university, the fellow architects, the students of Mizoram University, and also the students of other students, and especially the students of SPA Bhopal too, and dear friends. Thankful I am to the Vice Chancellor, Shri KRS Sambaseva Rao, sir, and the Department of Planning and Architecture, Mizoram University, who have given me this opportunity to speak to such a large audience through this webinar. Especially thankful I am to the Dean of the Planning and Architecture Department and to Professor Vineet Srivastav and his fellow colleagues for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. So with the permission of the Vice Chancellor, sir, and of course, dear Vineet, shall I start my presentation?
I think yes, you can start, sir.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, you all might have seen this this image on the poster, and Professor Vineet has actually designed that poster, and that poster, when it came to me, I was actually impressed with the image. Actually, whenever we talk about design thinking, it is even some of the designers also, some of the designers, architects, and some of the designers also, when they're given the design models, that use such kind of a image which is there on the left hand side with a question mark, where the thoughts or the thinking looks a little haphazard, whereas on the other side, when we talk about the design thinking, every one of us do something like that only. The only thing we need to know is to know ourselves. How do we think for designing architecture? We all are aware of the processes. So we all are aware of architecture design process, and when we design, we learn a lot about architecture design processes. So the only thing which we need to see is how do we think about it, and if we know that, that'll be the better, that'll be much better for all of us. So if I talk about the outline of my webinar, uh, design, I'll be talking about the fields of design, what is design thinking, why we need to describe design, the architecture design process, the design thinking, design process models, and the 5 characteristics of design thinking. Actually, what I did, since Professor Vineet has actually told me that this presentation has to be kept at the level of the students so that they'll be able to understand what exactly is architecture design thinking, and it is specifically to the architecture students. I kept it and I tried to keep it specific to the architecture students and the learning of the architecture students. So it is focused to the drawing part, and the build part is actually removed from it. So my whole of the presentation will be talking about design thinking related with architecture, and up to preparation of drawing, not going beyond that for construction. Uh, when we see and when we talk about design, it is a little difficult. I'm saying it is a little difficult just because many people had defined design in terms of a noun, in terms of verb, to plan, to do lots of things. But I feel that it is a little difficult to to define the design because of these 3 things, because it has got intuition in it, it has got imagination, it has got creativity in it. Because of that, it is a little difficult to define design. So I'm not going into the details of defining it. Rather, actually, even my theory of design classes, I start with asking my first year students to um, do the first thing, which is something like this only. It is a representation of my blackboard only, where I ask them that from your day-to-day life, identify where all you find design. So they used to come on board, and usually the board becomes full of the design fields. It is fashion design, urban design, event design, multimedia design, and whatnot. Uh, but of course, today's talk is focused to architecture design and the design thinking behind architecture design. So when we have so many fields where design is applied, or maybe in our complete day-to-day life, we actually witness design. That's why it is a little difficult. When we talk about design thinking, the moment you search on net, and the moment when we in general talk about design thinking, because it has an application on all these designs, usually people say that design thinking is an iterative process. We seek to understand the user challenges and assumptions. Basically, user is the integral part of it, and we redefine problems to attempt and identify the solutions for it. So design thinking provides a solution based approach. Basically, we need to understand the process and the thinking behind that process, and that from problem to solution usually gives you actually defines the process of design, and the thought behind that is design thinking. So it is a way of thinking and working. Um, Usually, you're going to find this kind of definition related with design thinking, that you need to empathize with the user, you need to understand the user, you need to define the user needs, their problems, and to those problems, your insights about it, and then ideate for the problem identification, prepare a prototype, test it, and then give it for as and present it as a solution. This is the general definition of design thinking, but we actually find a little difficult to identify where architecture is there in it. Actually, it is embedded in this definition also, because this is what we also do. But if we talk about architecture design thinking, we need to go into deep a little related with architecture. So over here, I would like to emphasize to all my students that simultaneously, when I'm talking about design thinking, you need to think about the kind of design problems which you get. And when your teachers, when we used to give you the design problems, and then for the whole semester you attempt for the design solution, you actually follow a design process. But what I'm going to talk about is the thinking behind that process, which is design thinking in architecture. So in general, this is the design thinking process, but we are specifically going to talk about architecture design thinking, and it is focused to our design problems, with which through a complete process when we achieve the solutions. So why we need to describe design and understand thinking? If we understand this, or if we understand thinking also along with process, we all are, I'm not going to tell you anything very specific today. It is we all know, we all do as architecture, because design we all are doing, and the process which is involved in it, we all are familiar with. So I'm taking this as a background, that as a process we all know what we all do in case of our design exercises. uh, but what specifically you're going to get through this webinar is the thinking behind that process. So what happens is, if you understand what you're doing, if you understand the thinking behind what you're doing, you understand your own behavior, and probably that will help you improving the design ability and the design thinking. If we actually classify the slide which I had shown you earlier, with so many designs disciplines, actually if we classify them, we'll be able to classify them with respect to product, interior, architecture, neighborhood, and city planning. And similarly, the associated designers with them. At product design level, it is the product designer. Interior design level, it is the interior designers. Architecture design level, it is the architects. And neighborhood level, the planners. And at the city level, it is again the city planners. So uh, you don't actually have a clear cut boundaries. Those boundaries are also overlapping. This is again a schematic representation of all design fields, where it has been specifically mentioned with respect to scale of populations, where probably, of course, there is an overlap again. Probably a product is specific to a single user, or it may be for multiple users also. It has an overlap in that way. But this has been defined with respect to the scale of population. I'm giving this background, which is essential to understand before design thinking. It is very much essential to understand what we do. We'll just revise that, and then we'll go to the design thinking models, and then we'll talk about those design thinking models and design thinking and architecture. So it is the schematic diagram explains that all fields, right from individual to, if we talk in terms of the users, we have the users, and at all scales, ranging from a small product to a mega city, we actually have um, full of a built environment. And that built environment actually is having the users, and then we have the designers for them. Now, what these designers do, that is our concerns for the today's webinar, and specific to the architects. We'll focus in this area, the architecture design thinking. If we talk about design process and design thinking, usually I'm again having these schematic diagrams with respect to the way we teach our students, that we give a problem. Basically, any design exercise is in all institution is given as a problem, and throughout their semester, they follow a journey to achieve a solution for it. Basically, what we do throughout our semester is we undergo a process of design. So this journey from problem to solution is the design process. So in theory of design, you have a statement that design is a problem solving activity. We solve a problem to achieve to a solution. Whereas when we talk about design thinking, it is that mind which is, or the thinking which is applied for this whole design process, where actually the whole design process goes as a step by step process. And probably that again I say that that image which Professor Vineet has actually floated, it is not haphazard. If we try and understand our thinking, it is not haphazard. It has got an organized pattern. If it is going to be haphazard, probably the solution is also going to be a little vague. And again, there is a statement in design also: whenever a problem is given, design can never be wrong. It can be best or it can be worst. So what we need to do is to follow a proper design process through a proper design thinking, so that we go towards the better solutions rather than achieving a worse solution. So this is what is the basic difference between the process and the thinking. But when we try and attempt understanding thinking, we'll have to go through the design process. That's why I'm giving the background of these design processes. And again, this picture over here to explain that the designers has to deal with such a range of things, uh, of course specific to their field, but it has got an overlap also. And many a times architects do interiors also, and many a times they go beyond their limits of architecture also. So always there is an overlap between the fields, and even the role played by the designers also. Talking about design thinking again, I think we need to understand the architecture design process. And there are various definition of architecture given by various designers. Various renowned designers has given lots of definitions of architecture. But the best ones are, I'd pick the best ones. One which has got a lot of elaborations, and one which defines architecture by simply defining it in terms of to conceive, in three things. Whenever a design project or maybe a design problem is introduced, we need to see it with respect to only three basic subheads, which is to conceive the design, to design and realize, and then to build. But our thinking is focused to these two aspects. So I'm again not going to talk about the build part. I'm going to talk about more the part which students do. They actually don't build, but they give their design exercises for as a solution. They complete their problem and give that as a solution to build. So I'll be focusing on this only, but I'll try to explain what exactly Francis D.K. Ching wanted to say when he says that it is to conceive. To conceive means to realize the people's need, or maybe let's say if I want to design my own house, probably I'm going to see lots of things, whether it is near to my workplace or not, whether it is near to a market or not, whether my children are going to get a proper school place or not. So all those kinds of considerations initially is to conceive the requirement, then to conceive the needs, then recognition of the problem condition. What exactly has been given is basically the things which are the part of the conception. Then to design and realize, we all know this is actually the part of the design process, where we actually try and with respect to the problem which we have, or we identify, or we conceive, we try to think about it, and then we try to realize in terms of satisfying more than purely, it is not just functional aspects. There are lots of things associated with it. So we try and realize that, and then we prepare drawings so that we'll be able to build with it. uh, we'll be able to bring to practical realization of whatever we had thought as far as the design problem is concerned. Again, I'm going to focus only is on this part. So the second definition or the second explanation has been given by John Simonds, where he talks in terms of or subdivided the whole architecture, or maybe he has also given the same with respect to the planning part also, where he's saying about commission, research, analysis, synthesis, construction, and then operations. Again, over here, I'm going to focus in this area where the problem has to be defined very thoroughly. Then we do a lot of research, surveys, and data collection. We do site analysis and identify the opportunities, the constraints, and the program. And then we prepare a program development. Along with that, we go with the things related with the synthesis in terms of concept development, the design refinement, its acceptance, and then we prepare the drawings for contracts and specification. And after that, it is constructed, and then the things related with operations. So this is the definition. What as a student we need to focus on is the problem definition. If the problem is not properly given to us, I think we need to ask what exactly is to be done should be very clear as far as the problem definition is concerned. Then we need to through various our resources, uh, whether literature, whether practical resources, what we need to do is we need to collect a lot of information about that typology which we are considering, and then we need to we actually do our site analysis, and based on those identifications we synthesize and we try and develop our concepts. This is what is the process explained, or maybe the whole architecture explained by John Simonds. When we club these two definitions, what we get is this thing which is related with the architecture design project, which is a good conception is required. Uh, and then you need to do a very good documentation of the existing condition so that the context and the conditions are very clear. We do site studies and synthesis. We do our case studies. Case studies, of course, are important in case of architecture and the things where prototypes testing is not so very easy. You actually cannot build and test it and then again rebuild. So case studies is an important part in architecture design process. Then we do area programming, design the concept development, and then we prepare drawings and go for the build of it. If we actually change the orientation, we need to focus on a good conception of the design problem, a very good documentation, a very good site analysis. Case studies has to be done properly, area programming, and then design concept development. So if we focus these stepwise processes thoroughly, and if we do all these things very thoroughly, probably we'll be able to achieve a better design. If any of these steps are missing, and if any of the things in these steps are missing, or maybe not given a proper thought of, or maybe not worked on properly, actually creates problem in the final design solution. So if we talk about again built environment, which we create through these design processes, the because these process, the architecture design process which we follow, result in creation of built environment. Now, this built environment is having two major components. There are, of course, related with these. When we detail out these built environments, there are other things, of course, embedded in it. But these can be very clearly classified into two parts, which is the built and the user. We need to understand very thoroughly the built and very thoroughly the user. Actually, the architecture, it is a little problem from the academic side also, or maybe from the teacher side also, that we give a lot of knowledge and information, and even we train the students for the build, but our courses are a little lacking in terms of user exposure. Actually, knowing user is very essential. So at the built environment level, I think what we are teaching is perfect. But in when we say that our built environments are not very comfortable to all, it is lacking just because even the architecture education is lacking a lot to basically talk much about. Actually, it is embedded in it, but in our process we actually forgot a little about the user. So if I talk about the user, we actually learn the user in terms of these things: the Modular Man by Le Corbusier, the Vitruvian Man by Vinci, and we learn a lot of anthropometrics. But do we focus on the needs and aspirations of other people? Because there are it's not just the able-bodied persons. It is not just everyone is not able-bodied with the anthropometric dimensions which we learn in first year. There are a range of people, basically a diverse population which is there as users. If I just talk about the users, it is we can say that it starts with male, females, and transgenders. Then when we see in terms of age groups, in general we can classify them as children's, youngsters, and elderlies. Then people of different countries, race, religion, caste, then people with different socio-cultural and economic situations. Then there are people having disabilities also. Even if we talk about one disability, you'll be having sub disabilities in it. Like if I'm talking about mobility impairment, it has got wheelchair user, it has got crutch user, it has got persons using calipers, and many more. Similarly, if I talk about vision impairment, we have no vision, blur vision, low vision, partial vision. Again, if I talk about persons with hearing impairment, persons with cognitive disabilities, and even even if I just remove my specs and I'm not being able to see, or if I'm not being able to read, it is basically a temporary disability. So people's actually having a conditional disability, or maybe a temporary one. Maybe pregnant woman, a fracture in hand makes you a little disabled. So we need to focus on all these users. And then uh, actually 2016 our constitution has added these many disabilities also. So you we with this, actually the population, the diverse population, the range of diverse population which the designers need to take care of is huge. Actually initially it was four, then it became eight, and now it is 21 disabilities as per the disabilities act. Now it was built in 2016. Now uh, so what a designer used to do is he needs to think about all these diverse users simultaneously. Actually our courses and our design process is such that it of course it talks about, but it lacks a little to talk about all these users. And we also we get focused so much in our design processes that we actually forget about many of them, and that actually results in uh, a lot of problems for, or a discomfort for people, and especially for persons with disabilities. And our environments becomes inaccessible also. uh, because of my area of disabilities, and all these things comes along with my explanations related with design and design process in architecture. So now we had seen the user. With the previous slide we had seen the users, and we actually now understand that there is a huge diverse population which designers need to cater, and which designers need to talk about. If you again see this, designers need to think about, because they are creating built environment and for human comfort, so they need to think about this whole range of people which we had seen in the previous slides. But simultaneously, along with those people, we need to focus on built environment, which of course has different typologies, but along with that it has got lots of variables in terms of land, air, flora, fauna, water, society, race, religion, diversity of people, then different typologies into consideration, then all the kinds of networks, communication network, electrical network, drainage and sewerage network, the road network, the circulation, and whatnot. So simultaneously, if we start thinking about so many people and so many components of built environment, probably a designers, it's a big task for designers. But my master's is in acoustics, and a very good uh, mm, basically in terms of elements of acoustics, CA Doxydis has given these 5 elements of acoustics, in which all those components which we are talking about related with built environment, they don't go beyond this 5 element classifications. We can actually, when we talk about land, air, water and all, it can be clubbed in nature. All networks is basically all network related with built environment, like communication, electrical, drainage, road network and all comes to network. The shells is the building typologies. The society and anthropos is basically the users, or the people in it. So the people forming the society. So component 2 and 3, the society and anthropos, are actually the part which caters to user. And then nature, networks and shells are the part which actually talks about the built. So this again is an, CA Doxydis has given this concept for settlements. He has actually talked about acoustics in terms of science of settlements, ranging from a hamlet to a mega city or a megalopolis. But the application of these elements to understand the architectural built environment is again an area of research which can be taken upon by people, through which lots of concepts like sustainability, a holistic concept, can be achieved, because through this, that scattered components of built environment can be organized and studied thoroughly and very specifically. So together with the user and the components of built environment, it is essential to understand the specific uh, mm, these specific elements of built environment, and which ranges from product to maybe even earth also, because he has defined these elements in terms of earth and the built environment on earth. So this is an area. I come back to the our topic today, the architecture design process. This process is actually, since it is associated with so many design disciplines, it has been given by various designers in various forms. But I picked up the three, and the first one I'm talking about is the one which has been given by Jean Ledetka and Tim Oglev, uh, who, who has actually, from the problem end to solutions, that actually said about that the first thing which whenever you get a problem is to know what exactly he has. Both of them has actually defined this process of design thinking and design process in terms of what's. They said that uh, what is to be done should be very clear to the designer. That's why to the students again over here, I specify that whenever a design problem is given to you, it should not be a single line problem, or maybe a paragraph given to you. It should be given in very detail, in because you need to know what exactly is to be done. If you know that, then probably you'll be able to go to the next aspect, which says that what if I do like this, what if I do like that. And when we talk in terms of architecture, she has given this with respect to product design. That's why um, And then there are further subdivisions of these what's also. All what's has got further subdivision, but for simplification I've just chosen these this process, and I'm not going to the detail of subdivisions of these what's. So basically, if with the design problem I should know what exactly is to be done. Then I should know what if I do this way, what if I do. In case of architecture, it will be the all processes which are there related with site analysis, related with our concept developments. Once you follow that process and you come to some kind of conceptual development, it is the what wows. You have too many of ideas for a particular design problem. Suppose a design problem of residence has been given. Probably we may think that I can construct it underwater, or maybe on a hillock, or maybe on. So those ideas, maybe the wows, a part of the wows, but we need to see what works. Practical solutions out of those vows has to be taken out, and we need to see what works, what is practically possible. So we need to see in terms of what is, what if, what vows. We need to identify all vows, or maybe those are the ideas which comes in our mind. Out of those vows, we need to see what works as a practical solution, and this is how this process has been defined. You all might have seen this diagram also, where it has got a co-designing by Elizabeth and Stappers, where but as I'm not agreeing to the initial base which we had made in terms of design image, the one which I'm talking about, the one which has been floated by Professor Vineet. I think it is always the a little organized way. It doesn't go haphazard. So description, something like this, in terms of designing criteria, ideas, concept, prototypes, probably they have the overall description of this has got that the thinking goes in various directions in the three-dimensional space, and the model represents something like this. But the out of these, I'm presenting the third one, which is given by the which is given by John Ziesel, which is actually a spiral metaphor. He says that uh, the design or the acceptable response lies in this domain, which is the central domain over here. Uh, Actually, if we try and understand in terms of our class, when we float our design problems, you actually have the initial image formation, and all 40 students, if I'm dealing with in a class, they ultimately come to a solution, and that solution lies over here. You can have n number of solutions, and just because of this characteristics, because you have lots of things associated with design, lots of things associated with design, the spiral goes on reducing, and then it ends in that acceptable domain. So throughout the journey, this ring or the spiral with the conceptual shifts, I think to detail this, I'll come back at the last again to this model. Uh, but to understand this model, we need to understand the 5 characteristics of design. Uh, I'll go to that. Basically, what John Ziesel has said that uh, the design solution lies in this domain, right? And when we start with our design exercises, there are lots of thoughts, lots of things, but when you actually go through the process, when you do site analysis, when you do concept development, when you do a lot of other things with the constraints related with bylaws, with related with the data you had collected, actually this thinking starts getting a little constrained. Not, I won't say it gets constrained, rather it gets refined and comes into this domain. So what I feel is that this model defines the process and the design thinking very properly. But to more and thoroughly understand this model, I think we need to understand the 5 characteristics. And before that, we need to basically focus on what exactly the designers do. They have ideas, they collect the data, they collect the information, they do surveys, they do analysis, they synthesize, and then try and develop the concepts to create something where nothing was before. Actually, that design solution was not existing. It is the designers who think about that design solution, and then they come up to the final solution in terms of the architectural design. So there are five characteristics of designing. And however, whatever purpose, these five characteristics emerge as useful in understanding what exactly the designers do. So these five characteristics are the three elementary activities, the two types of information, the shifting vision, and then it comes out to be to the domain of acceptable responses, and then development through the link cycle, the spiral metaphor, which we were talking about, which I'd shown you in the previous slide. So what are these three elementary activities? What exactly the designers do? uh, the moment designers get the design problem, you need to think about your class, and you need to think about the moment you get any kind of design problem. What you do is you actually start imagining about it. You actually image it, and that is imaging. uh, Through this imaging, you try and develop your concepts and come up with some kind of representation of these thoughts, and you try to present it. You present it in various forms. So you imagine, you present, and then you actually present for testing it. The three elementary activities are imaging, presenting, and testing. So design do not it doesn't happen by just sitting down. It happens with these kinds of processes. It is not one dimensional activities, it is multi-dimensional. That's why even that haphazard kind of sketch is also given by the designers as design thinking, because it goes in various directions. The thinking goes in, it has been represented with a model that it goes in multi-dimensional, three-dimensional space. Design is therefore a more complex activity. So the three elementary activities are imaging, presenting, and testing. We'll just try and understand what exactly we mean by imaging. Imaging is the ability to go beyond the information given. Bruner has said this: the process of seeing something where nothing seems to have been before. Then the activity, often called real activity by layperson, but to be accurately term it, it is called as imaging. So to conceive, now going back again to the explanation which Ching has given, to form a mental image or to conceive things, uh, something to be executed, an object or perception or thought to imagine, to picture in mind, to represent. Basically, when you get the problem, you start imaging. Then once through imaging, once an image has been created, you actually try and present it. And various ways of presenting is, those who have got good sketching. Even if you don't have good sketching, also the architecture students used to present it, or the architects used to present it through sketching, drawing, building models, photographs. All kinds of help is being taken for presenting it, so that the idea is conceived by the architect or the designer, and then it is floated to the people for as a presentation. So the various ways of presenting it, uh, actually, for all these, you need to have very good skills, and that's why the courses are designed to actually make you expert in these skills. uh, if you're good in these skills, if you're good in presenting, you'll be able to present the idea well. To choose the best mode of presentation, there are various modes available, and as per the need, as per the requirement, you'll be able to use one of the best way to present. So presenting, in a study of architects with different design experience, solved a short 2-hour sketch problem. Actually, this was a study given, and the results were recorded. It has been observed that those who are novice to architecture, those who are newer to architecture, or maybe if we talk in terms of first year to final year students, uh, the people who are new to architecture, they were struggling a little, whereas those who have got good skills, they were very good in representing the things in three dimensions with the help of sketches, with the help of various other modes of presentations. So the more experienced tended to be better able to make decisions. Their decision making was good because they've got good skills. They did not agonize or over decisions as did the beginners. And the skilled designers used three-dimensional representations more often, more quickly, and more realistically. So these skills are equally essential for an architect. Then when you present it, you are actually putting it for testing, and testing in terms of appraisals, refutations, criticisms, judgment, comparisons, reviews, confrontations, etc. All types of test. Actually, even when you come to your teacher, when you come to us, actually, we try and give you the critical appreciation, rather critics or the crits on your designs, and that is actually a part of testing. So after presenting a design idea in any form, designers actually step back. You actually step back and you actually float your design for the to the people for having a critical eye on that. And if there are things which can be improved upon, you again go back for improvement. So after presenting a design idea in any form, designers step back with a critical eye and examine their product. So testing, again, design testing means comparing tentative presentations against an array of informations. Basically, if we see it in terms of client and an architect, basically the client presents the implicit and explicit information which he gives you, and through your thinking, through your design thinking, through your design process, you actually give the solution or the outcome again to react or to for your own test what you had designed for. Degree of internal design consistency, performance criteria, all these you put for testing. And there are lots of factors like economic, technical, sociological, cultural, all those aspects which we had talked in terms of users and the built environment are the things which are there in the background. So testing again is an interesting design testing. The designer look back. What is interesting in this testing is that you present your things, and uh, because you get crits on it, because you the people who are observing, the people who are actually seeing your things, maybe in case of students and teachers, the teachers, when they give crits, you actually go back and rethink about what you have done. This backward and forward movement simultaneously actually improvise your design or refines your design. So the designers look both backward and forward simultaneously. Backward to determine how good a tentative product is, or maybe your design or the solution is. Forward to refine the image being developed, whatever you had thought of for the design exercise, you actually think about it and you present it for testing. You go back and forward for the improvisation. So while reviewing, criticizing, and analyzing any presentation, designers are preparing their way for the next leap. This leap is actually going to lead you towards the final solution. Thus, testing contributes to design innovation. You get a lot of innovation in design with testing. And without testing, actually you actually stuck to your own design idea. So it also makes designers task manageable in the face of potentially infinite number of alternatives. Basically there are lots of alternatives, but you actually goes refining your thinking, towards a solution. It also makes possible to replace the blind searching. You actually don't go haphazard. Actually, you make your search an intelligent search. So testing thus is a simultaneous feedback and forward process, adjusting the relation between design product as it develops and many criteria and qualities the product is intended to meet. Thus, without testing, there can be no improvement. Uh, I'd written this in bold. The teachers, the critical, not only teachers, you can even present your design to everyone, even your friends also for grades, and that is an important part in design for improving your own design, so that you get to improve or get better designs. In summary, imaging, presenting, and testing are elementary activities constituting a complex process called design. That complexity is actually simplified in terms of these three aspects. The second characteristic is two types of information. Because among the problems designers face are uh, technological, cultural, aesthetic, ecological, economics. All these things are embedded in our problems. So we need to be expert in all these areas also, and a great amount of knowledge and information is needed for this. Thus, design information must be explicitly formulated and rationally organized to make it easily retrievable. So, two types of information: image information and test information. There is the moment you get a design problem, basically, even you can subdivide it, what all you can test and what all you can imagine. Uh, so if I talk about image information, the designers use image information as an empirical source for basic cognitive design decisions. Uh, for example, uh, meaning of a school is actually child's life, right? Or maybe what do teenagers define their neighborhoods in suburban areas? What life for a person with disability is there in the built environment? This image information conveys a feeling or a mood of some environment. That is what is all image information. And what all you can test directly is the test information. The test information is useful to evaluate specific design alternatives. Uh, in an example where the horizontal and the diagonal or slanting bars were tested, it has been identified uh, that the horizontal bars are comparatively easier, but the photographs has given again one more idea of testing, that if we combine slant and horizontal both, so again this is the idea is there for testing. So this is what is as far as the test information is concerned. So the two type of information, using information in this twofold way is remarkably efficient and contribute directly to the design learning process. The third characteristic is shifting vision of the final product. Whatever is going to come out as final product, because we have backward forward movement also. So what designers do is they imagine. So the questions arises is, what do designers image, वो सोचते क्या है? What happens when designers test the response, when they present and that presentation or the designer's image is tested, what they do, and then how do design develop once conceived? The above questions presents the dynamics of design. So the vision is continuously shifting. Actually, one reason why designing is intriguing is that the final outcome design has to be assumed before the means achieving it can be explored. So actually what all is going to finally come out, which is going to be realized in the built form in the external built environment, is actually the designer thinking prior to that, when it is not actually placed, and that prior thinking, in that prior thinking itself, he imagines, presented, and once tested, once you test it, it is again with the improvisations, when they found flaws in it, or maybe areas of improvement, it is again reimagined and then again put for testing. So that's as spiral goes on. And with these kind of improvisations and refinement, actually we slowly, with this shifting vision also, we slowly moves towards the domain of acceptable responses, that central domain of acceptable responses. So designers predict the future possibilities. They basically figure out what exactly is going to happen uh, in future. So the future possibilities is actually taken care of in design, and then figure out how to achieve it. Basically, the various ways through which it can be achieved. So it is presented, it is imagined, then presented and tested again. So images rarely appear fully formed. Uh, when you actually get a problem, it doesn't happen that in a you say eureka and you got the solution. It doesn't happen like that. It's a journey, it's a process in which you do a lot of things. You all are aware of that process. You do a lot of things, and then at the end of the semester, or maybe if one or two problems, at the end of that problem, you get a solution. So these are the paths which are the creative leaps. So most images are developed and refined by means of serious efforts, and those are the creative leaps. So the process by which such efforts or the creative leaps are made are called variety reduction, reworking sub objectives, restoring balance, and then transformation. So the vision shifts, and it is actually triggered by testing. So the creative leaping is actually happens with testing. So testing a design response against, sorry, yeah, testing a design response against quality criteria and the situation and the context to find where presentation is strong and weak. Basically, through testing, you get those creative leaps, and this is how your design gets refined. Thus, testing is essential to design as inquiry and critically analyzing the tentative design, which adds a lot of information and the design gets refined. So towards an acceptable domain, or towards domain of acceptable responses, you actually have lots of thoughts, lots of ideas, lots of concepts, and then you slowly, with this testing and the creative leaps, moves towards the domain, that tubular domain, where n number of responses or n number of possibilities of solutions is there, and you actually in your thinking goes towards that acceptable domain. So the fourth characteristic is towards domain of acceptable responses. Building, parks, products, etc., may be seen as the endpoints that people reach by designing. So, however, for the improvement in the way we design, the various alternatives are controlled by our imagination, available technological knowledge, ethical values, personal skill. So, we need to be expert in all these areas. A designer, that's why actually are multi-talented, and many a times diversify their fields also. So using our imagination, increasing our knowledge, and additional time and money resources, you can actually broaden the range of possibilities. So in other ways, we can say that for designers, there is an infinite array of equally good solutions in the domain of acceptable responses. So amongst infinite number of possible alternatives, there will be infinite number of best ones. Thus, the complex problems, there may be infinite number of best ones, and any design problem can be as complex as one want to see it. So For a complex problem, there can be infinite number of best solutions, and uh, any design problem, maybe very small, maybe design of a toilet, maybe design of a kitchen, a very small problem can be as complex that we can even do PhDs, and there are PhDs existing only on staircases, only on toilet design, only on kitchen design. So they can, the smaller problems can be as complex as we can go in detail. Thus, for design of cities, buildings, interiors, products, the alternatives may be evaluated as better or worse. We as teachers, we never say that your design is wrong. It can, what we need to do is we need to think about all these processes and the thinking involved in it, going through the process of design and the thinking, achieve the best ones rather than going towards the worst ones. So now the question arises, how designers decide what is acceptable? On what basis designers test and improve designs? How does designers decide on a final design to be built? In other words, what are the criteria of acceptability and quality? At what time we should stop and say that now this is the acceptable one? For that, it is the two sets of attributes describe design. Those are the contextual responsiveness and internal coherence. We'll try and understand what exactly we mean by contextual responsiveness and internal coherence. Basically, contextual responsiveness is uh, degree to which design responds to build conditions such as the site, external and internal built environment. Basically, the subdivision which we had done in the previous slides in terms of built environment, when where we had divided that into the built and the users. So for us, it is very important to understand how to actually design that built environment, the external as well as the internal built environment, and simultaneously that built environment we need to make comfortable for all the users, the anthropos, or maybe the society or the users for that design. So, and internal coherence, actually, we do in our conceptual development exercises and even our the complete design process, where we talk about interrelationship understandings, where we actually prepare our bubble diagrams, matrices, and then through our ideas we try and come up with our designs and we present it. That actually increases the internal coherence. So thus responsiveness and coherence is the significant link between design and science. So towards the acceptable responses domain, if we talk about now, internal coherence results in form, right? And through that we actually achieve the build form, whatever we are presenting as a solution or as a concept for our design, that comes through the internal coherence, whereas external responsiveness in terms of context. So acceptability, when we are actually comfortable with the form and the context, the context which we had actually studied through the whole process. When we are convinced with the form and the context, it comes starts coming in that domain. So in design, we want to satisfy the mutual demands which the two make on one another, the form and the context, the kind of form which has been developed and the context which about which we are talking. So the fifth, again we come back to the spiral metaphor. That is the fifth characteristic also, where again now if you see with the background of all four characteristics, we actually get, this is a when we start our design exercise, we get that initial problem. With that we get the initial image, and then through these conceptual shifts we actually goes on thinking and ultimately comes towards the acceptable domain, with the help of presenting, with the help of imaging, presenting, testing, and refining our design thinking with respect to the process through which we goes on. And now if you see this in cross section, actually that spiral is that image. That's why right from the beginning I'm saying that I'd actually made the base as the image which has been floated in that PDF for this webinar. And that has actually uh, if we see this, so that is actually came up with a decision that our design thinking is not haphazard, or maybe it doesn't go haywire. It is actually systematic if we follow a proper systematic process. So the spiral process reflects the following characteristics of design: that backtrack. Designers actually backtrack, which we had talked about. They go back and forth, whole to part, part to whole. All these terms we are familiar with. Designers repeat the same activities. Uh, Designer repeats the same activities again and again, resolving new problems with each repetition. Thus, multidirectional movement result in one movement directed towards the goal as solution. So backtracking is very important. I think we are going a little beyond time. So instead of going into detail of backtracking, we understood what exactly backtracking is. In summary, backtracking is to adjust earlier decisions. Yes, Vineet, you want to say something?
You
In
can
summary,
you can continue, sir.
okay,
There is
we are actually towards the end of it only. So in summary, backtracking is to adjust earlier decision. uh, is integral part of design. We'll have to do. That's why I always say to my students that you should not stuck to your design, that this is what I thought of, and there is no possibility of improvement. Even there is always a possibility, even in the designs of master architects also, we find flaws. It is just this characteristic that you can always have an improvisation in designs. So we should not get stuck to what I thought of. We should be ready for testing through various methods, and then we should be very much ready for improvisations also. Probably that actually is that those critical appreciation from the teachers is actually for the improvement of your design. So that is an integral part of design, and it has to be it should not be taken as usually it happens that when the crits are given, people actually get stuck to their ideas. So one should not go for that. People should think about if that crit is going to make your design better, then you should accept that. uh, Repeating activities with shifting focus. In each cycle of design project, the designer presents, test, reimage responses to set related problems. Each repetition focuses on different problems. For example, designer may focus on context in one cycle, then internal relationship or spaces, then form. Actually, even when you study context, when you do site analysis, you if you try and do site analysis in a go, it doesn't happen. You'll have to subdivide it into various subheads, and you'll have to go by one, understanding each aspect. Those who are almost, I think all students are familiar with the process of site analysis, the process of concept development, and the other related the process of area programming, the process of case studies, the process of data collection, all those things. In that, we need to take things one by one. That actually, if we simultaneously think about many things, outcomes will not be as good. We can think about one thing at a time, concentrate on that, identify it in detail, and then club all of them together to come up with our solutions, and then improvise our solutions. So one movement in three. Designers are like good hunters and trackers. They appraise their goal not by rushing straight at it, but by continually readjusting to gain new perspectives. Backward movement, repetition at different levels, and progressively linked cycles combines into one towards the goal, the solutions. Thus, many actions, adaptations, revisions, and conceptual shifts are guided by designer's vision of design process, which ultimately leads something to build. So I again come back to this image, which again has been floated by. I really appreciate Vineet for floating this image, because this is what I thought. I think about thinking, design thinking, that it is not haphazard. It has to be. It has to follow a process. It has to go step by step. It has to go focus towards things, and the characteristics which we had talked about, the way we imagine, the way we present it, the way we test it, and then the way we get crits on it, it gets improvised. Your design idea gets refined. That refinement occurs, and that spiral ultimately leads you towards that central. So the spiral metaphor which John Ziesel has given is actually the cross-sectional representation over here of design thinking. Uh, I actually go beyond this. I think that this is again an area which can be taken as a research, or maybe which can be, which of course I'm working on, that it is not just a single spiral. Actually, he has talked in terms of overall development of the project. So he's saying for a single spiral. I would say that if we again see this image, the whole architecture design process has a part which is a good conception, and this also had its subheads in terms of locating yourself, in terms of market, in terms of various other things. So a good conception itself can become a spiral. Then a good documentation, lots of things related with that building typology, has got lots of subdivisions in it. So even that spiral is a part of your bigger spiral, or maybe if we see in terms of all these processes which we are aware of, all these itself are spirals, and it is a spiral of spirals. And again, this is actually an area which people can further look on, that spiral metaphor can, in a cross section, has got not just a single spiral, it is spiral of spirals, like the coil which we have, which has got the electrical cable, is, if you imagine that in cross section, which has got lots of different subheads, or lots of coils in it, uh, actually there in the form of spirals. So every part in the process is actually contribute to one spiral, and you can go into in depth to those spirals, and even those subheads are going to have spirals. So this is further we can work on. These are the references, and this is the list of the references. And of course, thanks to all who are part of this webinar. And now I'm open for questions from the people. I'm Sandeep Sankat from SPA Bhopal. This is my mail address and this is my phone number. You can note this if you have any questions. Right now, I'm open for any kind of questions from how so is the process. Vineet, I now hand over it to you.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks a lot, sir, for nice deliberations. Actually, you made this journey very smooth. Actually, it's a very big, the kind of dilemma whenever we are starting any design project, and especially as a student, sometimes it becomes really very difficult, for a reference point. And this whole presentation today, I think it must have given a very good insight to all our students to proceed in their design journey.
I hope so.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm thankful to you and to the university, and of course to all the people who are listening me. I'm thankful to all of them. Yeah, please, Vinay. I'm sorry for interrupting in between.
Actually, now I am opening this forum for. We have got some questions, and participant, if they want to ask, they can post their question in question and answer box. Uh, I have some questions. Will you answer, sir?
Yes, yes, of course. I'm listening. I'll try my
Uh,
level best to whatever I'll be able to contribute.
yes, yes, yes. Sir, there is a question from architect Rajesh Agrawal from Gwalior.
Yeah.
Uh, this question is, in my view, design thinking should be equally focused on tangible as well as intangible aspect. What is your take?
Uh, Rajesh Agrawal ji, a very warm hello to you. I know him. Um, his question is, of course, I agree to it. We should be very much open to all intangible and tangible also. And that's why I talked about tangibles, of course. I talked about this in the first slide when I said that it is very difficult to design in terms of the three aspects where creativity, imagination, and intuition is associated with it. So I agree to his aspect, and I feel that there are lots of things associated with it which are tangible as well as intangible. And because of that, that's what is my first slide. And it said that it is a little difficult to define design, although we definitely have definitions related with design. So I agree to it, and I think that is what is the subdivision or characterizations we can do in terms of intangible and tangible. Overall, in terms of the things associated with the build as well as the user. Yes, of course, thinking has got both. That's
I
what
hope
is my
right.
take on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Second question is from Mr. Abhinav Kumar. Uh, how to execute our perception and creativity for a user-centric approach during product productizing? How to choose out of hundreds of ideas for best results?
Okay. Okay. Uh, Actually, what Abhinav is asking about is there are two components in it. Uh, One is the user, which I'd said in my presentation, that usually when designers get involved in designing a product or maybe in architecture, uh, what happens is that we focus a lot on the whole process. What we need to do is we need to think about all users simultaneously. And when we are dealing with our projects related with disability concerns, uh, disability concerns. And we did a project at Udaipur where we tried to provide accessibility in the city palace. The forts are actually meant to be non-accessible. So what we did is we tried to actually focus on all users. And to focus on all users, what we had done is we've done a lot of exercise to focus on all users. So what we do is we prepare a matrix. Usually what we do is we prepare a matrix in which on one axis we take all users, and on one axis we take all the associated things related with space and requirements. So for that, the user needs, we cannot have it, of course it is related with the things which directly can be tested in terms of the dimensions and all. And there are behavioral aspects also. So how a person with disability or maybe the diverse population is going to behave in that built environment is a part. So what we do is on one axis we take all users, and on the other axis we take all our spaces. And for those spaces or for those requirements, we try to identify that in terms of like the intangibles and the tangibles, which Rajesh has also talked about. We try and identify to attempt for both, to identify the behavioral part also, and the one which is directly applicable in terms of the data or maybe the sizes or maybe the anthropometrics related with it. So that we take care of, and through that we try and prepare a complete matrix. And through that the best possible dimension, or maybe the best possible behavior with which the environment is associated with it. I would like to specify over here that in Indian situations, we usually don't have full-scale simulation models, which we had tried in our institution, where actually we try to create a built environment. Like we can actually, we have a lab where we can create a space where we can actually create and dismantle kitchens, toilets, and all rooms. In a whatever economic situations we had actually prepared that. That is 1:1 understanding of it. Usually it doesn't happen. It is very common in European situations. So users behavior, the tangible and the intangible, both are actually tested, and through that we should go and approach for our design. So probably my answer is very specific to architecture. The question which has been asked is specific to product. So we can when we are thinking about the users, we can simultaneously think about what I'm going to design for all users. I should think about that, and then the best thing I should take out of those all solutions, which I think for every user, the one which is going to suit for everyone should be taken care of. That's why and in that process, probably we won't be able to take care of each and every one. And that's what is the Ron Mace definition says, when we talk about diversity and disability. As also he has given the definition that we should take care of maximum possible users. So whatever design you're providing, you should try to attempt the diversity and the maximum number of people which you can be able to address with your design, so that no user is out of your design approach, or rather no user will not be able to unutilize your product, or maybe will not be able to utilize your product. That is what is my answer to Abhinav's question. Yes, please, Vineet.
Uh, then there is another question from Abhinav, same participants. During any project, backtracking is very useful, important to realize and modify the smaller units of a project already
Yes,
completed.
yes.
Sometimes modifying the already done units of be it design might lead to an improved or bad results. How to confirm whether our modification is correct?
I don't think if the attempt, or maybe it will lead to a bad result if the crits are not proper. Probably if it will lead to a bad result if the improvisation is not proper. So I usually as an immediate response to his question, bad result is going to see. I usually say to my students also that you need to see the crits, और फिर सार सार को रही गए थे, सार को you need to take care of, and thotha dahi udaye. So if the things which are actually resulting in a bad solution, you should not go for those. As a designer, you should be able to take your decision which are going to improvise, or which are going to refine your product, rather than making it bad. So I think that thing, as a designer, you should apply, and आपको थोथा उड़ाना ही पड़ेगा. Then only you will be able to achieve the best ones, and you won't get the bad ones.
Yes. Sir, we have another question from Professor Aditya Singh.
Okay,
In this
Aditya.
process of,
Okay,
yes, yeah,
Aditya from Vaishnav University.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes. In
yeah.
this
I
process,
say hello to Aditya. Yeah, please, Vinith. Question, please.
in this process of design thinking, equally applicable to all the levels of architecture education. I mean, the first year students to final year students thinking process.
I feel so. I feel so. Probably not to the basic design, but if we are talking about architecture design, even designing a smaller room or a toilet or a kitchen, you can actually apply the complete process. Probably something here and there will be less or more, but if you actually learn the process, I emphasize on this a lot to my students also, that if you learn the process, probably you'll be able to handle any design problem, any big design problem also, or any smallest design problem also. And that's what I'd said in case of my presentation at the last, that it can be even a small design of a toilet or a staircase can be as complex as that. You can do a PhD on designs of staircase, or even it is just part of a staircase in a building typology, or maybe for any big architecture design process. So I personally feel that architecture design process, whether applied to any of the design problem, why shall we reduce it to only first year to final year students? I would say that any kind of building typology, ranging from a design of a toilet, a kitchen, or a single bedroom, to maybe a big academic institutional campus, or any kind of design, the big design exercise. So the question that the design process, you need to understand and learn design process, and along with that, of course, design thinking, which is required, which goes parallel to the design process. So you'll be able to solve any design problem if you're sound enough, and if your learning of architecture is sound enough to take care of each and every part of design process. Probably you'll be able to achieve all design exercises. Any design problem given to you, you'll be able to come up with very good solutions if you follow design process. And that's what I emphasized in my last slide also, that the whole process, or maybe the definition or the description which Ching has given and John Simon has given, and then I combine them into a complete design process where I say that these are the components which you need to take care of. Anyone skipping any of the part is not going to result. That means that what I mean by this skipping is that you're not doing that process properly. So what you need to do is you need to do that design process very thoroughly and very properly. Every part of that has to be attempted very thoroughly. So that actually means that you know the design process. If you know the design process, you'll be able to do any kind of whatever is the scale of the project, you'll be able to achieve uh, a design solution for it. That is what is my answer to it.
One very interesting question from Professor Sital Sharma.
Mhm.
She is asking why students fear design so much and what they should do to face design instead of getting feared.
Hello, Sheetal. Sheetal is principal in LNCT. I think same
Yeah.
Sheetal. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, uh, Madam, we are teachers, right? And I feel that it is very much essential to spoon feed students in terms of design, not in terms of their creative ideas, not in terms of their innovations, not in terms of their innovative ideas. What we need to do is whatever he has thought of, maybe wrong, because I say that there is nothing wrong in design. The design can be worse or best. So that fear of design actually can be removed if we actually address students and we try to help them with our design thoughts, not imposing our design thoughts, rather appreciating whatever he has thought of. It might be best or the worst, but we should give them whatever best in terms of process, in terms of understanding of process, in terms of the complexity of design. We need to spoon feed them a lot. Usually it is my experience also that we float the design problem and we expect a lot from their side to come, and that creates fear in the students. Whatever he comes up with, we should appreciate that, and we should try to tell them how they can improvise on it, so that his design goes from worse to the best. Right. And even we feel that our students are very good when we say them to collect data, when we say them to do case studies, they go and do a lot of stuff. They come up with that. The moment they come on to their own design, they get a little stuck up. Over there, you need to have your hand at the back of the student, and you need to help them over there to wherever, what all are the reasons because of which they are stuck up. There are lots of things because of which the students get stuck up in their design. You need to actually understand the students wherever they are getting stuck up, and then you need to provide a solution so that they'll be able to improvise their design, and that fear goes off. And of course, if we try and identify the reason behind the fear, we'll be able to resolve it. But I feel that jitna whatever we expect from the students, I think many times more we need to give to the students, and that usually doesn't happens. Like if we are teaching building construction to people, we give the complete thing to the students, and they then reproduce the sheets and all, right? Whereas in design, what we do is we think that we had given the problem and our things has ended actually. But I think in the architecture design courses, the studio periods are kept for so long. In our case, in SPA Bhopal, we have 4 studio periods. We need to be over there as teacher along with the students continuously for all those 4 periods. And wherever they are finding problems, if we can resolve them, that fear definitely can be removed, and they'll come up with very good designers. That is what is the answer to the question.
Right said, sir. There is a question from Sir Mal Goite from our faculty.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think design behavior differ from end user behavior? What design process changes should we as an architect prioritize?
Just a minute, please repeat the question, because
Uh, how do you think the design behavior differ from end user behavior? What design process changes should we as an architect prioritize or prioritize?
no, there is
Yeah.
no design behavior. It is uh, uh, if see, architecture is not whims and fantasies of the designers. Many a times we think that, many a times even students do that, that the moment you give the design exercise to the student, they start सब जहादीद बनने लग जाते हैं. So that shouldn't, that you cannot, unless and until you understand the users design behavior. There's nothing like design behavior. You need to understand the people's behavior and then design for them. You cannot have design behavior. That's why I said you to repeat the question, because what I feel is, as a designer, we need to understand the diverse people, the diversity which is existing, which I talked about in my presentation in terms of the diverse population, the people, and then understanding the needs and aspirations of those people. We should design in such a way that the diverse population is accommodated in my design. So for that, we need to understand the people's behavior in a design environment. So in a design environment, we need to understand the people's behavior. A very good book is there to understand the built environment, which is Enabling Environment by Danford and Steinfeld, and that actually teaches a designer how you can actually evaluate a built environment and the user behavior in it. So and there are certain models in terms of functional independence measure, in terms of environmental and functional independence measure, in terms of usability rating scales. So basically the qualitative aspect of the user behavior is actually evaluated in a built environment. And it is actually difficult to to actually convert those qualitative aspect of people's behavior in a built environment. But as a designer, it is equally essential to understand the people's behavior. And then those people's, when you understand those people very thoroughly, probably your design solutions will be as per the understanding of those peoples. And when you properly uh, provide your solutions with respect to those people, or the understanding of those people, or the understanding of those behavioral aspects, the qualitative aspects converted into quantitative to for evaluations, then probably you'll be able to design very thoroughly and very properly. So it is the people's behavior which is very important, and for any architect to understand, you are actually we as an architect are using people's money uh, to build the built environment, right, on our own ideas, right? So our own ideas are not whims and fantasies. We cannot just create things. We need to understand users and user behavior in the built environment, and then present our design solutions. This is what is my answer to this question. Vineet sir, please. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Vineet sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, there are question more or less similar which you have already answered, but there is one question from Mushahid Anwar. Is trying to know, as theory part you explained very well, sir. But
Mhm.
what are the practical ideas to develop design ideas in students?
Okay. See, when you talk about practical ideas, um basically the design thinking gets refined if you have very good skills of representing your ideas. your वो आपका एक ख्याली पुलाव है जब तक वो आपके दिमाग में है, till you cannot bring it to a practical reality. So you need to be, first you need to be an expert in terms of skills, right? So there are various ways through which you can convey your idea. Conveying your idea is very essential. For that you need to be very effective in terms of learning the associated aspects. That's why we focus so much in terms of improving sketching, in terms of improving drawing, in term now we insist for learning the softwares. And then there are approaches through which you will be able to earlier in our olden times, when computers and virtual reality was not so popular, we used to make lots of block models and building models. Even for achieving a detailed project models, we used to go with a lot of lots of block models, which actually improves our visualization, the way we look towards our design. Because you I just cannot sit at a place and think about my design and I'll be able to get it. It doesn't happen like that. Even if I'm getting it, I need something as a skill to bring it to maybe on paper. Maybe I need to realize it in terms of maybe into a 3D model. Nowadays in terms of virtual models, nowadays in terms of making even people part of the virtual models. आप जो 5D 7D environments देखते हैं, those are very effectively used in case of architecture design also in European situations. So even those, the aspects of virtual realities are the newer possibilities. The full scale simulation models, I'd seen in European situation, I'd seen full lab where complete built environment in 1:1 scale, a flat or maybe a bungalow can be designed with all furnitures in it available as, and students can actually feel the space in 1:1 scale I'm talking about. So we have that kind of labs, which is actually very less in Indian situations. Probably very soon I'm going to come on a text on that. So Indian situation, we don't have that. SPA we had tried for this, and along with that, bringing things in practical realities with the help of our 3D model, or maybe the printers, 3D printers. That is also one of the possibility. You actually design on your computers and you print it directly in terms of 3Ds to actually visualize and come up with the things. So all the things which becomes a part of your presenting your idea. It is an idea if it is in your mind only, but it comes to a practical reality when it is there on paper, or in terms of model, or maybe in terms of 1:1, or maybe in terms of virtual model walkthroughs, or maybe the 3D perspectives, all those kinds of things which are helpful in presenting. Through that, it helps for better thinking, to better analyze your idea, better think about your own design idea and improvise on it, and basically refine your design idea. That's what is the answer to the question, I think. Yeah, please, Vineet.
Yeah. More or less similar question, sir. What are the difference in architecture standards of our country and foreign ones?
Oh, this is a question which I think everyone as SPA is concerned about, and one of my fellow colleague has actually very effectively explained in his PhD presentation. One of his PhD presentation, he has actually compared the standards of various countries with Indian situations. Actually, we actually don't have standards. Even abhi hum whatever we are teaching to our students, we say to refer time saver standards, and we say to refer Newfords. Whatever we have as Indian text is actually borrowed things. My fellow colleagues has very effectively defined that the standards which we are following are very different, just because the human sizes, the anthropometrics of American situations, or maybe people from different countries, is different in terms of it. And then there are other aspects also in which we are different. So those standards should be prepared in terms of Indian people, Indians conditions. There is a lack of standards, and this is again is a very good area where people can work on. And even for this, I feel that we actually don't almost in all colleges in India, I think we lack the 1:1 understanding. We are very good in reducing the scale and work on, but 1:1 understanding gives a very good understanding in terms of standards. When you practically see people, the diverse population, when they come, and when you study their behavior, and then come up with your identifications related with standards, related with design, their behavior, you'll be able to prepare very good standards. At present, whatever we have, like in terms of disability standards, we have harmonized guidelines. uh, Even for those also, I feel that those are a little borrowed ones, and it has actually been proved in one of our PhD research also, that it is actually the borrowed things. And probably this is an area in Indian situations where people should work on. And something like time saver standards, I imagine to see in my life something like that, which can come up with respect to Indian conditions and Indian standards. That is the answer to this question. Yes. Vineet sir, please.
Yeah. So, as we have already exceeded almost 43 minutes, sir. So I'll,
Yeah.
but it was really very, insightful discussion, and I hope our larger audience must have benefited through this webinar and afterwards discussion. Uh, so we are towards the end, and I would request my colleague Ms. Sylvia to present a vote of thanks, please.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K.R.S. Sambasivarao, our invited speaker, Dr. Sandeep Sankar, and all the participants today. A very good morning to you all. It is a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks today. And I, on behalf of the Department of Planning and Architecture, Mizoram University, would like to express our sincere gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor for his profound encouragement and support. And your presence today has immensely enhanced the importance of this webinar. And I wish to extend a hearty thanks to our invited speaker, Dr. Sandeep Sankat, for your valuable time to share your knowledge and your thoughts and insights with us. The way you explained the subject of architectural design process and thinking was simple and clear, yet extraordinary and mind-stirring. And also the presentation has immensely sparked a new interest and propagate the importance of human-centric design, which we tend to ignore and compromise in the built environment. So we have gained a lot from the lecture, sir, and we thank you. And we hope that this is just the beginning, and we hope that we will have more interactions and more lectures with you in the coming future. And once again, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in today's webinar, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you, sir.
From my side also, thanks to all of you. Special thanks to Vineet and the Mizoram University, and thanks to all the participants also. Thank you.
Yeah, you rightly said, Sylvia. This is not the end. Actually, this is the beginning. Actually, and we are looking forward for future alliance, sir, and hopefully we'll be coming with a lot of other discussions and webinar, maybe many other,
Sure. Yeah.
design thinking processes. So with this, now I'm ending here, and I thank our Professor Vice Chancellor, Professor Kiara Sambasivarao, sir, for giving us this opportunity to conduct this webinar. His constant support and encouragement is always very beneficial to our department. And I once again thanks to all participants, those who have participated, not only participated throughout this webinar, they were here with us, and that is a big encouragement for us. And especially those who have asked questions. Thank you a lot. Thank you all. Thanks a lot. And see you again with some more exciting sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.